Hello, my name is Rachel Forrester-Jones and I'm Professor of Social Inclusion at the Tizard Centre, University of Kent. At the Tizard Centre, our aim is to improve the quality of life of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and people with mental health difficulties. And we try to do this through our training and degree programmes, through consultancy and through research. Today I'm going to talk about my particular research area, which is social networks and social support. And I'll be specifically relating this to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That is, people who have an IQ of less than 70 would have difficulties with everyday living tasks, such as getting up in the morning, maybe dressing, transport, or budgeting, and the onset of the condition is before the age of 18. Intellectual and developmental disabilities includes people with autism and people with Tourette's syndrome. And about 1% of the world's population would be described as such, and that's mirrored in the UK. I'll also be talking about people with mental health difficulties, and in the UK about 1 in 4 people will suffer from a mental health difficulty at some part of their lives, but they may recover from that mental health difficulty. John Donne said, "No man is an island. We cannot exist by ourselves. We have to have other people around us." And arguably, in terms of social inclusion, social networks are the apex of social inclusion. We cannot access community activities in any meaningful way in terms of group activities unless we do that through social relationships and social contacts. But what is a social network? There have been various definitions going right back to 1950s by Barnes and also by Mitchell in the 60s. They have been described as a web of relationships between people and a set of linkages. A more recent working definition is that they are an opportunity structure which may or may not provide social support. But all of these definitions relate to the structure of the social network, and we can describe a person's network in terms of the structure. So, for example, we can look at the size. How many people are in your network? In the general population, excluding Facebook members for perhaps obvious reasons, social networks are on average between 90 and 124 people. For people with an intellectual and developmental disability, that average number is just 22. And for people with mental health problems, the average network number is about 23. And this is borne out in most of the research and also the research that I've been doing myself with colleagues. Who are the social networks members? Who are they? Are they family members? Are they staff? Are they friends? Are they people without the condition? Or are they really made up of just staff, family, and other people with an intellectual disability and a mental health problem? This is a feature of the social networks, unfortunately, for people with intellectual developmental disabilities and people with mental health difficulties. They have small size networks compared to the general population, and the membership tends to be made up of the same types of people. There's little variation. We can also look at the density of the network. This means the ratio between the people who know each other. Does everybody in your network know each other, or are there some people in your network that wouldn't know others? The diagram that you see before you shows an individual in the general population who doesn't have an intellectual and developmental disability or a mental health difficulty, and you can see that they have 10 areas of life from which to derive social networks from. The lines between the different areas of life denote the linkages between them. It means that people in one sphere of life, for example, work, they know people in the book club. Now, The elegance and the advantages of this type of network is that it's wide and it's varied, and it means that if, for example, relationships are going badly at work, which they sometimes do, the person can then go to a different area of life and seek solace and get support from individuals in that area of life. Contrast that then with this social network depicting the area of life of a person with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You can see that there's only 4 areas of life from which they can derive social networks, and all of these are linked together. So everybody in their different areas of life know each other. Now this can create problems. It can create problems of privacy and arguably dignity. So, for example, when somebody with an intellectual and developmental disability exhibits challenging behaviour because of something that's maybe upset them because they can't communicate in the way that they want to, then it's likely that everybody in their network will know about that and they may be talking about it. And that can lead to greater stigmatisation of the individual. Unfortunately, for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and for people with mental health difficulties, networks tend to be characterised by high density. We can also look at the frequency. How often do you see the people in your network? How often are you in contact with them? There are people that I've interviewed with mental health difficulties that say that they would love to be in touch with old friends, family members who they don't see on a day-to-day basis, or they don't even see on a weekly basis, and they would like to. The people that they are tending to see are members of staff, their doctor, other people with mental health difficulties, and this isn't really what they want. Also, generally speaking, when we have relationships which we choose and they're voluntary, there's some reciprocity element to them. They do things for me, I do things for them. This diagram shows 3 different types of relationship. With A, the person who is denoted as A is giving to the individual in the centre. For B, the individual in the centre is giving things to the other person. But for C, the relationship is reciprocal. They're both actually giving things to each other, supporting each other. Again, from previous research, we know that people with intellectual disabilities and people with mental health difficulties often don't get a chance, actually, to reciprocate, to do things for other people, and they'd like to be able to do that. Sometimes services restrict them, so they're not able to do that. For example, a case where I was involved in, individuals were not allowed to give Christmas presents to staff because of the potential that there was abuse, that they were going to be losing money. But actually what that really meant was that was the one time that they were able to reciprocate their relationship was taken away from them. How long has the relationship lasted? How long has it endured? For some people, they have lifelong friends. For others, and arguably for the individuals that I'm talking about here, people are coming into their life for very short periods of time. Staff, key workers, they come in for 3 months, they go out, and really there isn't that continuity, and they would like that, and it would provide a support to them. And how close is a relationship? Are there people in our lives that we can confide in? It's important to be able to share our worries, our woes, our aspirations, our secrets with close companions. I've said that social networks are smaller for people with intellectual disabilities and people with mental health difficulties. And actually the optimum is to have a much wider, much larger social network. However, if that social network does not provide us with anything, then it's not so useful. So now we're going to talk about social support. There are many typologies of social support out there. You can Google them. This one is developed from ethnographic work that I did with people with mental health difficulties and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And there are 7 types of support. So personal support, or helping somebody get up in the morning, get dressed and washing. Domestic support or household support, help with cooking and cleaning the house. Material support, giving money, giving gifts. Decision-making, choices. Who helps us make our choices? From what we're going to wear, to who we're going to live with, where we're going to live, what job we're going to have. I've mentioned about confiding relationships and also companionship. Sometimes you don't actually need to talk to the person, you just go to the cinema and sit with them, but it's still company for you. And this is one of the issues for these two groups of people that I'm talking about, that very often they lack companionship and invisible support. It may be that the person doesn't actually say anything, but you know that at the end of the day they will come up trumps for you, they will keep an eye on you, they will look after you. Why have I spent the last 20 years looking at social networks? Why are they so important? Well, they're important to our health. It's argued and borne out through the literature, through research, that a supportive network means that you will recover from an illness quicker than if you have a less and smaller social support network. So social networks are good for your health. Supportive networks act as a stress buffer. They buff away the trials and tribulations and the stress that we have through everyday living. It's argued that successful placement of people with intellectual developmental disabilities and people with mental health problems is reliant on social networks. Very often placements, whether it be living in a particular house, in supported living or supported employment, breaks down not because the person doesn't like the house or the environment, not because the person can't do the job, they can do the tasks very well, but it's because the relationships around them break down. More recent work has also shown that having a social supportive network helps our self-esteem. It makes us feel good about ourselves. There's that sense of belonging, that sense that people like us, that they want to be with us. Of course, there may be weaker ties, formal ties that we just need for information, and that's okay. Those are all part of the social network that we have. We have to acknowledge, of course, that some relationships are abusive and that there are safeguarding issues for some individuals who are vulnerable to abusive relationships. But arguably at the end of the day, generally speaking, social networks gain us access to laughter, to friendship, to even love. This social network guide is used to measure the social networks of individuals. As you can see from the diagram, this map enables us to locate different names of people, or if people can't tell us the names, just the individuals themselves in different areas of life, and then we can count them up. We can then ask questions about each contact in terms of what type of social support they are providing the individual with. We can also ask them questions about the interactional features of the network, the frequency, the duration, and the reciprocity. In this age of multimedia, Facebook, email, we can also ask people about their usage of those mediums and how useful they are. Unfortunately, for many people, they don't have access to a computer or email, and they would like that. That would make them feel included and would enable them to develop more social contacts. We've used the social network guide to measure individuals' social lives and to look at their social relationships in the UK and in Europe. In terms of the globalisation strategy of the university, we're also now taking it further afield, and most recently we're working in Brazil. Brazil is a rapidly developing economy, and because of that rapid expansion, it has highlighted inequalities thereof. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities in particular in Brazil do not get state funding or very little state funding, and so most live with their families all of their lives. And their social networks are very depleted because of that. There are NGOs, and the one on the slide, API, has been going since the 1960s, and they have about 2,000 day centres across Brazil where they take people in every day and they do activities. The issue for API is that many of these individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities have been attending those day centres for up to 40 years, doing the same tasks, getting stuck in the same routine, and so their aspirations and any further development that they could make is being maybe counteracted by the situation. So therefore, we've put in an intervention to get people out of the building-based, more institutional type of service into the community. And we've taken baseline measures of a number of individuals in terms of their social networks, and we're going to be taking measures again after about 3 months, and then 6 months, and then after a year. If successful, we will roll this out, the intervention and the evaluation of it and the measurements, to the rest of Brazil, to the rest of the APIs across Brazil. So this is one example of where we can help develop and enhance the quality of life of individuals with intellectual disabilities and individuals with mental health difficulties, of which social networks are a very important part of individuals' quality of life. Thank you very much for listening.